Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to help to continue to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels. And if you've ever wanted to know the secrets to building a life that's fulfilling with the capital that you need, then guess what? This is the show and the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. I'm very serious about this conversation because you know what? Today's guest began his real estate investing career in 2009. He founded his company in 2017, which now has 900 doors and approximately $125 million of assets under management. And these numbers may have changed, so we're going to ask him about that and he'll let us know. He also has a passion for working with investors by teaching them the power of syndication in the multifamily space. He is the founder of LifeBridge Capital LLC and the host of the amazing real estate syndication show that has over 885 episodes, which is amazing. And you know what? Really importantly is that he and his wife are on a mission to help other families through the process of adoption, because they've actually gone through and they've endured the financial burdens that the process puts on families, and has also committed 50% of their profits towards this goal. And they also have 3 beautiful children that I'm sure he's going to tell us more about. And it gives me great, great pleasure to welcome to today's show, Mr. Whitney Sewell. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Billy. Pleasure to meet you as well.
Yeah, this is so much fun, and it's just really, really great to, I get inspired by a lot of the things that you have done and the way that you continue to go out and add value to the marketplace and educate people, and it's really a pleasure to have you here on the show. And I also want to thank you also right up front for your service to the country and what you've been doing or what you did through the Army National Guard. Thank you very much for your service, Whitney.
You're very welcome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure, man. So as you know, Whitney, I like to ask everybody at least the same 5 questions, kind of things in the middle. They can go wherever, because we're going to talk about you and the things that you're doing and helping others. But help us understand, where do you live in the United States?
So I'm on the East Coast, but I'm in Virginia, in Roanoke, Virginia. So a small town close to Washington, D.C., but probably 4 or 5 hours from Washington, D.C., maybe 5 hours from the East Coast.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So on the East Coast of the United States, and I think most of us know where the DC area is. And help us understand, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
It's such an interesting question, especially in the last 24 hours, right? And I think it's just helpful to have a just positive mindset, right? All the time and be looking for those things and focusing on those things. I think it's important. But the first thing I thought of is that my family and I are going camping tomorrow, just as a family. And it was, I would say, just this morning, my boys they're excited about it, right? And they're just seeing their excitement in that this morning. That's probably one of the most positive things like that I can think of the last 24 hours. Like that really stood out to me. Like, man, it's so worth the work going into making this happen just for that,
Yeah, no, I love being able to, like you said, focus on the positive. Being able to have time with your children is something that is just, I watch my boys 9 and 11 now, and they're growing up faster and faster, and being able to have these little moments when you can share with them and just be the family is fantastic. So we'll focus on what's going forward. And, I mentioned a couple of things at the very beginning, Whitney, just talked about a number of the things that are important to you, the mission that you're on, the lives that you're affecting. And I'd love for you to tell your backstory in your own words, in your own way, and also maybe highlight some of the different important decisions that you made to get to this point in your journey before we go take things forward.
Yeah. So happy to elaborate on anything that you want, Billy. But I joined the military in 2001, March of 2001. So that was 6 months before our nation was attacked. Right. And so at that time, we had no idea that we would be going to war. But we did find ourselves going to war. I spent all of 2005 in Iraq. And, that was obviously life-changing, right? Not everyone in my squad, unfortunately, not everyone made it home. And so obviously, that has a big impact on anyone. And but one thing the military taught me was to have that never give up mentality. It's not an option to give up, right? I mean, when you're at war, there's people just depending on you to perform. It doesn't matter that you got kicked in the face or stumped your toe or whatever it may be, or you're having a bad day. It's just not an option, right? And so that taught me a lot. But I thankfully I did make it home safely. Lord was so kind to protect me physically, over there and bring me home. And I quickly, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do as a career. And I thought, well, law enforcement seems like a great or easy transition, right? I love the uniform and the structure and the discipline. And so there was 1,200 applicants for 5 positions with Kentucky State Police. And I was blessed to have one of those. And I loved working the road as a police officer. Obviously learned a lot again through police academy and all that stuff and working the road. But about a year in, I got married and discovered that, it's pretty difficult just passing each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage. Right. And so and then I started seeing guys retiring that had 25 to 30 years on, and they were making like $35,000, $40,000 a year. And I saw, wait a minute, this just is not what is best for my family long term, right? I saw other families, torn apart because of this. It's just very difficult, working that schedule long term. And so that pushed us to pursue something else. And that was in 2009. And in came real estate. I thought, wait a minute, so many people had built wealth in real estate. It wasn't like one or two people, right? Like hundreds of thousands of people have built wealth in real estate. Thought if that many people can do it, I should be able to do it too. I can do it, right? But I obviously had no idea where we'd be going today or where we were at today. But at that time, I thought, okay, if I just get a few rentals, it at least supplement my policing income, and I won't have to work as much overtime, right? I won't have to work every night and weekend, to make that extra income. So I bought a couple triplexes. That was in 2009, and we learned so much the hard way. We were self-managing, made so many mistakes, didn't do proper due diligence, trusted the seller. Too much, all those things. Right. But you know what? It was such a great university, of education, and thank the Lord, like we didn't quit there. Right. Thankfully we that wasn't it. We just didn't say, this landlording thing's not for us and stop. But I then became a federal agent, and that moved us to Virginia, where we live now. And so I was a federal agent for about nine and a half years. But during that time, we bought and sold some other properties. I got up to like a 15 unit, and I thought that was like so big, right? Man, but I didn't have any idea about this syndication thing. I didn't even know this world was out there. I would see an apartment building. I would think, maybe 20 years from now, or I don't know who those guys are that can make that happen. Right. Just no idea. Didn't even question that it was something that I could do at that time. But then I started going to conferences, and I started meeting guys and gals who were buying 100-unit apartment buildings and had only been in the business a year or two. And I thought, no, wait a minute, if they can do this, I can do it too. And so I started learning about the syndication business, and we just completely committed to that business. We sold everything else and said, I love the discipline. I love the structure. I love the business side of it. I love that I can work with professional investors and work with professional, even property management, and build that team of professionals that are really good at what they do. So I'm not having to do all those things, right? I can focus on what I'm good at and build this business and brand and help so many other people, as opposed to looking for more tenants and toilets, for myself to manage. Right? And so that was a big mindset shift, right? But we completely committed. I also had another job. I had another business at that time where I was training horses professionally, and I I share that. Not too many people in our industry know that, but it was a passion of mine since I was a little boy, and I got really good at it. It became very easy. And I say that to say it was a passion. I loved doing it. I created a big name around that. I was traveling all over the country doing clinics and helping lots of people. My wife and I discovered that it was never going to be passive, right? I still had the rental units. I was still a federal agent. I was in the arena till midnight most nights and weekends, giving lessons and training and all this stuff. And you know what? It just finally hit us that as much as I enjoy this, like I'm never getting to see the family, and I'm always going to have to be the one doing it. And so at the same time, we were learning about the syndication business, and we decided, the Lord just gave us peace about selling everything. And we sold the farm. We sold everything related to that, and just to commit to the syndication business. And so I hired a mentor. We moved into a small house in town. I built an office in the basement, and I just pretty much lived in that office for 2 years. I mean, barely got to see the family. And it just had to be extremely committed to making it happen. Obviously the daily podcast and doing deals and working full time and doing our third adoption process, all those things. But that's many details, but very quickly, Billy, ask anything you want.
So I absolutely love the story, and I know you literally sold the farm to be able to commit to doing what you were going to do. And yeah, I mean, it is really difficult. You can't train. First of all, I appreciate you sharing something that you don't normally share with others, or maybe a lot of people don't know that the horse training, and that isn't something that you can do on Zoom. Like you either have to be there or, it's not something that you can outsource. So you have to be there. And so all of these different things that were happening, but to be able to decide to make that decision means that you literally cut off all of the other options, and you and your wife were moving forward with your family. And so I detected a couple of different patterns that you talked about. And so you talked about the military, you talked about the police at the state officer, and then the at the federal agency. Sorry, I wanted to say the Fed, and that was definitely not right. So there's all these things that going on in my mind. But with that, I'm just curious, Whitney, that what were the transferable skills that you learned in those careers that really helped you and are helping you to do two things? Number one, continue to accelerate your growth, and also help. And when I say growth, meaning in terms of the multifamily and the syndication business, as well as helping other people.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And because at first it was really hard for me to figure that out. Like, from my skill sets, how can I get in to grow a business or work in real estate or whatever, And one, I think, was a servant mentality, right? Being ready to serve, ready to help people. Whether it's military, whether it's policing, even a federal agent, I loved being the first responder, right? I love, somebody's hurting in a vehicle after a car accident, and you're there to pull them out, or get the children out, or, all those things. I loved being able to do that. But obviously the servant mentality. But two, something I didn't think of for a long time was just people skills, interviewing people, talking to people. I really, even starting a podcast, I thought, how in the world am I going to interview these people? And then it finally hit me that, I've been doing interviews with people like 20 times a day on the side of a busy interstate, in horrible conditions, for years, right? For a long time, or just interviewing people as a federal agent. Like, you have to know how to speak to people. And so you can relate to them and them not feel like you're a threat, and all those things. I think many years of that has led up to some great people skills, not just for podcasting, but just for networking, or just the desire to help people, and really drawing out what do they need? I think those are some skills that have really helped me. Not even second to just the mindset piece of that training, and in business, being ready to just get knocked down and keep going, because it's going to happen.
Yeah, I love that. So the servant mentality that you had first and foremost, and also to really being able to focus on the people skills and drawing on all those multiple different activities that you were doing, you realize, hey, listen, you know what? I actually have these skills, and they're helping me now to accelerate what it is that you are doing in terms of growth and being able to go out and positively impact so many other lives, which absolutely makes a lot of sense. And you also mentioned before, Whitney, that you were moving along and you bought some smaller multifamilies and you got that 15-unit property and you were, doing things, and you realized that there were, you had to make a change. You had to do something differently. And it seemed to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you said that you decided that you wanted to go to conferences. And so that's another decision that you made. So what did that decision to start going to conferences, what did that do? Because I'm going to assume that was probably not the easiest decision to make, to leave the family and start doing that kind of stuff. But why did you make that decision, and kind of what happened once you did make that decision?
Yeah. So during that time, that's when I was really committing to the syndication business. And I knew that I needed more education, for one, but even more than that, I knew I needed a mentor. And I was on the hunt for the mentor that I was going to hire, right? Because it can be extremely expensive, right? But investing in yourself is the best investment, right? I mean, that's, the more you can learn, the better you can become at specific things. I mean, you can, even if you lose all your money financially, you can go do it again, right? As long as you have that skill set, or as long as you're growing. And so finding that mentor was crucial. And so I went to a conference just to hear a potential mentor speak. I thought that would be a great way to see if I really want to hire this person, and join their group, get to know them better, talk to them in person. And so that's why I went to the first conference. And that was eye-opening, right? I got to meet lots of people that were in this business, right? So my eyes were open to many things, but I also got to hear this person speak and decide that it wasn't the best, the best thing for me, at that time. But I also, I got on Bigger Pockets, and I found people that were in other mentoring programs and whatnot, and finally, discovered the person that I wanted to hire. But that's what pushed me, I guess, towards that first conference. But after that, I was traveling 1 to 2 weekends a month somewhere in the country, flying, for probably a year and a half or longer, or nearly 2 years, just to network as hard as I could go. But at that time, that's when I went to the first conference, and my eyes were open to this conference thing where you can go network and meet people, that are way ahead of you, and you can learn so much from.
Yeah, so that's great. And and I like patterns and principles, right? And so there's a pattern here, once again, that you didn't just go out, and I want everyone in the Going Long family to understand this. Whitney didn't say he just started going to conferences. He was very thoughtful about the way that he went about doing that. He was purposely looking for that mentor. And it sounds like he invested time, energy, capital, financial capital to go and meet that individual. And it sounds like it didn't work out, but it's better to know that up front than later on, right? After you've done X number of thousands of dollars in many, many, many hours, which is the asset you can never get back. Wow. So that's great. And so you started down that path, and as you're down that path, and then life starts to change. Are you still, once you make you have your mentor, and are you still, after that mentoring and meeting a number of people that are not just at conferences, but typically people that are active in doing things, were you still focused on the 15-unit properties after that, Whitney?
So no, I was completely focused on the syndication business then, and growing my own brand, networking with investors, growing our investor base as fast as possible. And so I was not interested in buying anything like a 15 or 20 unit anymore. I was strictly focused on 100+ units.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. And then as you focus on those, and you mentioned before that, you really wanted to be able to have a business and be able to utilize a number of the skills that you have. And there's something that really comes maybe, and I'm someone who's been in the sales profession for 24 years, right? And so I'm just curious, as you talk about that servant mentality, that you want to serve other people, tell us a little bit about how you have learned to be able to diagnose situations and be able to help others, investors specifically, solve their problems.
I think that we make it more complicated often than it has to be, and I don't think it's like this big scripted out thing, you have the script and it just works, every time, right? I think it's just ask some open-ended questions, right? Even some small talk in the beginning goes such a long ways. Learn something that's personal about that individual, I think those things, whether I was on the side of the road as a police officer speaking to someone, it's a highly confrontational area, right? I mean, they're so nervous, right? And the first thing I need to do is just kind of lessen those nerves, right? It's just say, hey, I'm here to help you. I need them to know that in a very high tense area, where we can't hardly hear each other that well because traffic or whatever it may be, or maybe, they just came out of a high tense area in a house, where we're trying to help them, whatever, we want to be able to relate to them very quickly. And so knowing something personal about them, asking, what prompted you, to schedule a call, things like that can prompt great conversation. I was just saying, I'm so thankful, that you took the time to speak with me today, and tell me what prompted the call. I ask investors that often and I get things from them that it's important to them, right? It may just be that they went skiing over the weekend. Right. And that's great to know. Right. Well, and I've never been skiing, but, we can still have maybe something in common. Right. And then just ask different questions to figure out what's important. And again, it's probably going to be much simpler than what, you're envisioning in your mind. You're thinking of this big script. But for me, it's just been keeping it very simple, asking a few open-ended questions, and then just showing them you really care about, just be genuine about your conversation. Right. And think through, like, what is it they're telling you? I don't know. And that seems maybe that seems simpler than what you were expecting, Billy, but that's helped me more than anything. It's just to pull the curtain back, and just be transparent as possible, but to ask open-ended questions so they can see that you really care about who they are.
Yeah. And I love that you said that because, one of the things being in the sales profession for such a long time, you realize that at the end of the day, when you are helping individuals solve their problems, it's really that servant mentality that you were talking about and focused on them, what is interesting to them, why it's interesting to them, and just really get a chance to understand exactly what are their drivers, what are their fears and things like that. And it's a simple conversation. And that is, it's another one of the reasons that you're able to go out and positively impact so many lives positively, which is another thing that I'm absolutely convinced of. So, one of the things I do want to maybe pivot and ask you a little bit about the fact that you live in Virginia. We've talked about having over 900 different doors in your portfolio. Can you just confirm that all of those are not in the state of Virginia?
That is true. They most of them are in Colorado, and then we have another 172 in Idaho as well.
Okay, perfect. So this is fantastic for the Going Long podcast, right? Because we want to help people feel comfortable and confident investing beyond their backyard, but also to help us understand the fact that you were in Virginia, you'd gone from the smaller, now you were looking to go bigger, but what was the motivator or the driver for you to say, you know what, we're going to go bigger and we're going to go, what I like to say is long distance, like not in my backyard?
Yeah, that's a great question. And at first I thought, that I probably would look for properties in the Carolinas, which are not far from me. I could drive down there, whatnot. However, things changed in our business. And when I met my business partner, ultimately, it took he had complementary skill sets. And one thing that he had already been working on was acquisitions. He'd already had broker relationships and in some really good markets already, right? And so I already had the investor relations, right? I could already raise a lot of money. And so, it was then going to be time for me to start to build those relationships, the broker relationships, right? So we can see more deals and larger deals. However, he had that, but he didn't have money. He didn't have the investor relations, right? He didn't have that network. And so when we partnered, it made so much more sense to hit those markets that he was already a part of and had those relationships there, because I already had the network of investors that he didn't have. And he lives in Denver. And so our properties are in his backyard. Ultimately, they're not mine, but I'm still in those markets at least once a quarter, usually, if not more often. But still, that just made a lot of sense, because that's where, we could attack the fastest,
Yeah.
And he's there, he's there. Ultimately, it is in his backyard. He's able to attend property management meetings and things like that, in person. And Boise is actually really close to him as well. So he had those broker connections. We had connections to deals, but he didn't have the capital or investor base, which I had. And so when we were able to partner, it made sense to focus on those markets.
Yeah, and I love that. So it's really about the complementary skills, number one, and also being able to bring together for the team for the overall better way of serving your investors ultimately. And I think there's one thing that's also really interesting, Whitney. With your model, you also act not only as syndicator but also operator. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And also too, because this is one of the real strengths of really having an operator that understands the local market. It's another value add. And so as we talk a lot about here on Going Long and with the Going Long podcast is one thing is the syndication and being able to aggregate capital. The other thing is actually being able to operate in a specific location. So the fact that you can do both really has a major advantage for your investors, which I think is brilliant and also helps to provide some additional context. I don't know if there's something else you may want to add to that.
No doubt about it. It's what helped us to perform so much better and still is those complementary skill sets like you talked about. But instead of me having to then take the time to go find the broker connections and find the deals, I mean, he had that. Right. And now, I mean, we can even manage it so much better and more efficiently now because we've split those tasks up instead of me having to spend all that effort and energy on those things. Well, he's doing that. Right. I mean, and we're working together in those things, but ultimately that's his focus.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So each one of you have your lanes, you stay in your lanes, you drive your lanes, and ultimately be able to best serve your investors, which absolutely makes sense. One of the other things I would like to ask about is, I mean, you have an absolutely phenomenal podcast, right? And you have done a cadence which is daily, right? And I know what it takes for our team to get this moving forward and being able to get out. But I would love to know really help us understand the reasons for deciding to go to a daily podcast. And as a result of doing a daily podcast, how is that helping you to serve more people?
Well, I'm speaking to 7 times more people a week than most other people are, right? And so think about how fast your network can grow. I mean, it's almost that simple. And people always say, "Oh, has it been worth it?" Right? And I say, well, if you looked at a profit and loss statement for the podcast, you would say, "You are insane. Why in the world are you doing this?" Right? Because it costs a fortune to produce that many episodes. I mean, it does. All the team members it takes to do it and produce it. However, the things I can't put a value on is all the connections. I mean, I've interviewed almost 1,000 people in the last 3 years. And that network, I mean, allowed my network to explode, right? So fast. Not only am I connecting with that many people in the business, but I'm also able to have that many more conversations that are helping that many more investors, that are finding me through those means, me helping them or whatever their challenges in this business. The podcast, I mean, I do not believe we would have closed on over 100 million last year in real estate if I hadn't been doing a daily podcast. I firmly believe that. I'm always making connections through the podcast. It's like, oh, wait a minute, or I'm learning stuff, right? It's my own education, right? Especially early on. I mean, not as much now, but still, I interview plenty of people that are way ahead of me and I get to ask questions, right? I mean, especially when I was first starting, like every guest I had on, I'm asking them questions I want to know the answer to, right? And it's a great time to get to ask experts and also share that information, obviously, with everybody else in the business that's trying to get where you're at, trying to grow their business and brand. But it's just it's made me grow in ways that I never expected, right? And especially early on as well, I had to build a team from the very beginning. I knew that I couldn't edit every piece of audio and video and write all the show notes. And if I had done a weekly show, I believe that I would have tried to do everything and I would have gotten behind. I would have gotten frustrated, probably would have quit. But doing a daily show, I knew that wasn't even an option. I've never edited the first piece of audio or video and don't even know how and don't want to. But that's the thing, though. I had to build that team. And so it's pushed me in many ways and made me grow by really overcommitting.
Yeah, and so I love that. So by being able to overcommit, and I'll just draw an analogy here. So like, and I can relate to a lot of what you said. Like there were certain things I was like, I'm never doing that because if I have to do that, we'll never launch this. It will never even happen.
Right.
But it reminds me a lot of when you are looking sometimes to purchase a single family residence that is right down the street from you, because you'll want to go there every single day, all day, do every single thing, versus being able to purchase a business, right? When you purchase a business, you cannot do everything. And so the fact that, once again, and I go back to some of the patterns that I'm seeing just with what you've done in the past, being very strategic about the way that you wanted to go about things, being able to know that you wanted to be able to impact more people. And it's not about a financial return, right? Because I'm sure that you meet people all the time that are like, hey, listen, I've heard your podcast and thank you for helping me and thank you for doing that. You can't put a value on that. And at the same time, you continue to go out and do that, which I think is just fantastic and just shows where your focus is going out to help other people. That servant mentality that you talked about before.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I do have another question, because I think it's really important, because we talked about in the very beginning, and I do want to spend some time on the foundation, and I want you to help us understand the place that you have in your heart for adoption and for the families that go through this process. Maybe if you could talk a little bit to us about your involvement and why you continue to do not just you're investing your time and your energy growing your family, but you've also talked about your foundation, where you are donating 50% of the profits. And I think that's something that I would like for us to spend a couple minutes talking about, please.
Sure. So when I guess if you can imagine a one stoplight town, a little bitty place where my wife and I grew up, when I got the federal agent position, that moved us to Roanoke, right? And we moved to a bigger town than we'd ever lived in before. Of course, I've been different places in the world with the military and whatnot, but it's a very different place, right? And even then, the city we live in is much smaller than most people, but still, when we moved here, we had never heard of adoption before, or we had heard of it, but never thought about it. We'd just been married a year or two, or let's see, we'd been married, I guess, 2.5 to 3 years at that point. Never discussed adoption before. Never crossed our mind. We didn't know anybody that was adopted in our little bitty town. It just wasn't part of our thought process at all. But when we moved to Roanoke, we met a pastor. Actually, we went to this thing called Secret Church, and anyways, a pastor called David Platt, and he was talking about caring for orphans and widows, and after hearing him talk and how he and his wife had adopted, he expressed how there's 160 million orphans in the world, how it can cost $40,000 to $60,000 to get a child home through adoption, all those things. But just how their family, the Lord had really just blessed their family through adoption. And so, on our way home from hearing him speak, it was as simple as us saying, why would we not adopt? Why would we not? We couldn't think of a good reason why we wouldn't do that. And so within a week, we turned in our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And 2 years to the month, it was a long process, but 2 years later, we got to bring our first son, Samuel, home from Ethiopia. And then about 8 or 9 months later, our second son, Elijah, came home through adoption. And then our daughter, Eden Joy, was born 19 months ago and brought to our family through adoption as well. And so our family we've experienced the struggles, especially initially, of the financial burden of, we did so many fundraisers, so many generous people, just helped us in such big ways. When it's like, okay, you need 12,000 for this, you need 13,000 for that, you need 5,000 over here. It's just like, yep. Wait a minute, like really? What, what's all this money going towards? But and you have to do it, you have to do it. And so, the child is worth it. It's not their fault. It costs so much. Right. And so, we were dedicated to making that happen. The Lord provided every penny that we needed for every adoption. But often now my wife and I have calls with other couples who are looking to adopt, and they just want to hear from our experience. And we talk about international and domestic. We've done both. And just sharing from what we've experienced. And often, when they say, well, how much should we look, how much is that going to cost? And we say, well, you can plan on 40 to 60,000, depending on this or that. And they're like, well, wait a minute, that's more than I made last year, that I'm going to, it's more than I make. Mm-hmm. How, and it just like halts them in their tracks, right? They would be great parents. There's plenty of children that need families, but it's like, because of legal fees or because of whatever, home study fees, or, it's like this child just has to stay in their current situation, which is horrible. So we found that, when a family can have a $5,000 matching grant, or some ideas around fundraising and a matching grant, like they're just like spurred on, right? It gives them that boost of, what, I can do this. We can get this child home. And so that's what pushed us to form the LifeBridge Foundation and be able to help families to do what we've done. We're just passionate about helping as many children and families as we can.
And so, I just, I frequently like to talk to the Going Long family here. But once again, Whitney, it's recognizing a pattern, and it goes back to the servant mentality, and really looking to be able to serve others, and doing it in a way that is helping not just young children, but also other families that are going through this. And now that you have not only gained the capital through the experience, you're also able to help other people from a financial perspective as well. And so it speaks a lot to you as an individual, to you and your wife in terms of what you're doing, and also to your foundation as you continue to go out and make positive impacts on other families and other children, and whether that be domestically or internationally, being able to share that experience. And so I appreciate you taking a couple minutes to talk about that, because I know that it is something that is very important, and I know that it's something that a lot of our Going Long family is also very interested in understanding more about. So, wow, you know what? I guess the only question, you mentioned one other thing, and I can't let you say something and not talk about it. And plus, if you haven't seen Whitney on internet, then I don't know where you are. If you've not seen him across social media, you obviously are just somewhere hiding. But you mentioned something earlier, and I kind of went over people's head, but you said that you acquired $100 million in assets during a time where many people around the world were locked in their homes. So where in the world, when most people were not doing anything, you decided to push forward, and I say you and your company and your investors, to move forward? Why in the world would you do that? Help us, help us inspire us. Yeah, because a lot of people.
Opportunity. We were still buyers, no doubt about it. Obviously, we closed a large project a week before the country shut down in March, and at that moment, it was a 216 unit property, $30 million project, and we thought, oh, okay, what's going to happen? Thankfully we had massive reserve budget. We had, we were prepared as we could be. We had $1.5 million in a reserve budget from day one, which, I was almost scrutinized at that time that it was excessive. Right. And then all of a sudden, a week later, the country shut down. Nobody's saying that.
Yeah. Right? You were amazing at that point.
So, but that property's performed very well. We've not missed any distributions, and it's done very well. And we purchased three more, last year since then, since that deal, after everything happened. But it was still nothing but growth in most of these markets that we were already in, right? People, the pandemic, quote, only caused people to come to our markets even more so that we were already in. They are exploding. Boise had 11 vacant units in almost the entire market in December or January. It's unheard of stuff, so our properties there in Colorado Springs are just doing amazing. So, why would we not have purchased more? And we're not, we wanted to be smart about it. Obviously, we took a time to pause and think, okay, we need to be doing some studying here. We need to figure out, the best we can, right? But still, there were some amazing deals coming along, and we knew that it was time to act.
Yeah. And so, I love that. And it just goes once again to having a very strong, competent team, and really truly understanding the location where you are going to place your capital. Right. And so just underscores it. And it absolutely is phenomenal. So before we get into the final three, and thanks for sharing that, by the way, because I think a lot of times we forget that even though things can be extremely chaotic, when your plan is strong and sound, and your team is the right team, and you're in the right location, any time is the right time. So
chaotic for others means opportunity for some.
Correct. Where there is chaos, some say there is cash flow. So with that, just before we go into the Going Long final three, kind of help us understand, Whitney, what do things look like in the near future for you and for LifeBridge?
Yeah, in the short term, we'd love to do 4 to 6 more deals this year. Multifamily, we'd love to break into another market and potentially another asset class this year also.
Okay, fantastic. So sounds great. Sounds good. Continue to move forward, continue to grow, continue to serve others. So you know what, Whitney, the thing is, like, we're at the point where I need to ask you the going long final three. But the thing is, I never ask anybody the going long final three unless you tell me that you're ready for me to ask you. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, here we go. So first of the going long final three, we started over where you were in Virginia on your side of the pond. I'd like to bring it back here to Europe now. Help us understand, what is your favorite European city, either that you visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
If I had to think of bucket list city, I think it would be Paris, and I think it's just the thought of taking my wife there one day. You know, that's really the only thought behind it. I'm not very educated about Europe.
That's fine. I can tell you. Here's the thing, Whitney. I'm going to share something with you that most of the Going Long family knows. I started a 1-year sabbatical in Paris 20 years ago. So when you go to Paris, it's a wonderful, lovely. I mean, I love it. I have a special place in my heart for it. But I planned on going over for 1-year sabbatical, and it's been 20 years. I lived in Italy and now in Spain for the last 15 years. So it's a beautiful, beautiful city. I love Paris as well. So the other thing, Whitney, question number 2. So there are lots of, like, every successful person that I know has only made like one mistake in their entire, okay, I get that wrong every time. So made lots and lots of mistakes, right? Or learning opportunities, or however you want to call them. But the one thing that I would ask that you share, what is like one lesson that would be really important for the Going Long family to take away from you today?
Just one?
Just one.
Have a mentor. I know it seems cliche, you hear it all the time, but I still see people say, I'm not paying for that. And I say, you're making a mistake and not investing in yourself. I wish I'd had a mentor in 2009 when we bought those triplexes. However, if it had gone very well, I may not have continued where we're at today, you know? So it's a blessing and a curse, right? But I think having a mentor, it changed everything for the just trajectory and speed also of my business. It allowed me to make less mistakes. We still make plenty of mistakes and you know, always will, I'm sure, no doubt about it, right? But it's so helpful and gives you so much more confidence when you have somebody on your side that's been there and done it, right? You can just make a call and say, hey, what about this? And it's so simple to them, right? But you're blind to it because you're in the middle of it. It's so crucial. Hire a mentor. It's hard to find the right one. It is, but be willing to pay for it because it is so worth it. I mean, you're investing in yourself, but man, you know, if you're willing to put the time in, it will return so many more times, you know, than what that investment is.
Yeah, I love what you said there, and I'm just going to repeat it because you added an additional thing, and it's so true. You find a mentor and find the right mentor. I mean, look, Whitney gave us a perfect example earlier. He went out to conferences and he was searching for a specific type of mentor. He checked it, didn't work, and guess what? He kept looking. He kept find the right mentor. And don't be afraid to pay for it, because if you pay for a mentor, that's one thing, but I promise you're going to be paying if you don't pay for it.
That's right. You're going to pay either way.
You're going to pay either way, right? And so so thank you for sharing that. And then we'll go into the very last of the Going Long Final Three, Whitney, which is really helping us to understand and feed our brains. And so can you, or I guess, what book would you recommend to the Going Long family today?
Does it need to be real estate specific?
Absolutely does not need to be real estate specific. Whatever book you want.
I would say one I just read.
By the way, but before he tells us, if you're not watching us on the video version, you need to jump over and watch us on the video version, because he also has a wonderful, lovely bookshelf behind him with a number of books. So yes, go right ahead.
One I just got through that I would recommend to anyone is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. And it's something I've almost been implementing from day one because of what we talked about, because of overcommitting, right? I had to build the team. I knew I was not going to be good enough to edit audio and video and all these things, right? So I had to find those people. But this is a great way for you to start. If you're not thinking about your team, if you're not thinking about a team, you're not thinking about scaling. And so, this is a great place to start. It really helps open your mind to many things you need to know about just finding the right people. Instead of you trying to focus on that task, find the right people so you can spend the time on the more higher productive, higher paying tasks that you are good at. And so that's a great place to start. I just think for any business really, to think about who and not how.
Okay, fantastic. So as you build a business, think about who, not how. Dan Sullivan, love that. And, as I think about, I can't believe the time has gone by so quickly, Whitney, but I think about, you talked to us in the very beginning from March of 2001. Things happened 6 months later, as most of us know. Then 2009 came around. You started getting in, recognizing that you didn't want to spend 25 years at earning 25 grand. Something had to change. You wanted to do something completely different. You wanted to supplement your income. You got your properties. From there, you realized that, hey, listen, you wanted to do something on a larger scale. Things that you continue to talk about and I continue to see and recognize in the entire Going Long family is really having that servant mentality and looking to go out and make sure that you are serving others, and the people skills have now helped you to continue to go out and impact so many lives around the globe, hundreds of thousands every month, millions over the last 3 years, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that you continue to also have your own focus and missions and wanting to be able to help people beyond real estate, people that have gone through the adoption process and need help financially, need experiential help, and you're there to continue to serve other people. And I know that there's so many people that are watching us, that are listening to us, Whitney, and they're just inspired and they want to reach out to you, that are part of our community and others. And so help us understand, what is the best way to get in touch with you, Whitney, and or your team to find out more about what you're doing?
I would encourage you to email me, whitney@lifebridgecapital.com. You can call or text me at 540-585-4338. Obviously, you can go to LifeBridge Capital and sign up on our Contact Us page, and our team will get in touch with you and schedule a call with me. But you're welcome to call or text me personally or email, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
All right. Fantastic. Whitney, I think it's phenomenal. We're going to include your number, your contact information as well in the show notes so that everyone, if you're running on the treadmill or you're cooking dinner or something like that, don't freak out. Don't worry. It'll all be in the show notes. So the team is getting all that kind of stuff taken care of. So I just want to take another second. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, Whitney, for investing your time with me, with the entire Going Long family, sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Billy. My pleasure. Honored to be here and to get to know you better.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so very much. And just a couple seconds, I just want to say a couple words to the Going Long family. I want to thank you once again for investing your time with Whitney and I. I mean, he left so much knowledge, real insights, real world insights, love, caring for everyone. And you know what? You have a unique opportunity right now to share today's episode with 2 or 3 other people. You can be that person that positively impacts your friends' lives with Whitney's message today. So, go ahead and take that opportunity. Share it with 2 or 3 other people. Help also attract other like-minded people to our Going Long community as we continue to grow together. Also, leave your honest review. It's one of the things that I go through every single review. I'd love to know what it is that you loved about today's conversation. What are the things that you'd like to hear in the future? And like I said, I take time going through every single honest review. And you know what? I know that I'm super excited to welcome you back on the very next conversation. And until then, I want you to go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow. Don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.